Enterprise from Kirk.
Bridge, Zulu.
You have an intruder aboard. Could be masquerading as Crewman Green. General Quarters. Security, Condition 3.
GQ, Security 3, sir.
For decades, he's been Captain Kirk, boldly going where no man has gone before. But behind the iconic Starship Commander lies a story most fans never knew. 4 marriages, heartbreaking tragedy, living in a truck, and at 90 years old, actually traveling to space.
Is the most profound experience I can imagine.
The real William Shatner is more fascinating than any script. This is the secret life of William Shatner from Star Trek Revealed. Early beginnings in Montreal. William Shatner was born on March 22, 1931, in the Notre-Dame-de-Grâce neighborhood of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. He came from a conservative Jewish household, the middle child between 2 sisters, Joy, who was 3 years older, and Farla, who would be born 9 years later. His parents were Anne Garmaze and Joseph Shatner, who owned a clothing manufacturing business. The family name had actually been Shatner before his grandfather Wolf Shatner anglicized the spelling when the family immigrated. All 4 of his grandparents were Jewish immigrants from settlements in Ukraine and Lithuania, part of the great wave of Eastern European Jewish migration at the turn of the century. Young Bill, as he was known then, grew up in a household that valued education and hard work. His mother Anne taught elocution, giving private lessons in speech and pronunciation. Perhaps this early exposure to the mechanics of voice and delivery planted seeds that would blossom in his acting career. His father Joseph worked long hours in the garment business, building a company that provided a comfortable middle-class life for the family. The Montreal of Shatner's childhood was a vibrant, multicultural city, but it was also divided along language and religious lines. French-speaking Catholics, English-speaking Protestants, and the Jewish community each had their own neighborhoods, schools, and social worlds. The Shatners lived in a predominantly English-speaking area, and young William attended Willingdon Elementary School and later West Hill High School. But he discovered his passion early. At just 6 years old, he began acting at summer camp, pretending to be someone else, making people laugh or gasp or cry through performance felt magical. By age 12, he was already performing at the Montreal Children's Theatre, taking on the role of Tom Sawyer in a production that stayed with him for life.
Yeah, and that's how come I'm late for supper. I sure worked up a big appetite doing all that running and chasing.
Stepping onto a stage, feeling the lights, hearing the audience, becoming someone else captured him completely. It was more than entertainment, it was transformation. His parents had different plans, naturally. They wanted security for their son, a stable career in business or law, something practical and respectable. The arts were fine as a hobby, but as a profession, that was uncertain, risky, no way to support a family. So when Shatner enrolled at McGill University, one of Canada's most prestigious institutions, he studied economics at the Faculty of Management. Not drama, not theater, economics. He graduated in 1952 with a Bachelor of Commerce degree, fully equipped to enter the business world his father inhabited, ready to join the family garment business or find work in banking or accounting. But the stage kept calling. Even while studying commerce, even while taking courses in accounting and business statistics, Shatner couldn't stay away from performing. He wrote the 1950 college review, Red, Light, and Blue, pouring his creative energy into comedy sketches and musical numbers. He acted on CBC radio, doing voice work and radio plays that taught him how to convey emotion without physical presence, how to paint pictures with voice alone. He performed in student theater productions, staying up late to memorize lines after spending the day studying profit margins and supply chains. The pull of performance was too strong to resist, a gravitational force stronger than parental expectations or practical concerns. After graduation, instead of following his father into the garment business, he made a choice that would change everything. He became the assistant manager at the Mountain Playhouse in Montreal, a way to stay close to the theater. From there, he joined the Canadian National Repertory Theatre in Ottawa. These weren't glamorous positions, but they were apprenticeships in the craft he loved. Stratford and the Road to Broadway. The real breakthrough came when Shatner joined the prestigious Stratford Shakespeare Festival in Ontario. Working under the legendary director Sir Tyrone Guthrie, Shatner took on classical roles that tested and expanded his range. He played in Marlowe's Tamburlaine and appeared in the opening scene of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, a production broadcast across all of Canada. One performance became the stuff of theater legend. In a production of Henry V, Shatner was understudying Christopher Plummer in the title role. When Plummer was suddenly sidelined by a kidney stone, Shatner had to step in. Instead of simply mimicking Plummer's interpretation, he created his own distinctive take on the character. Plummer himself was impressed by this bold choice, recognizing it as a sign of real initiative and potential. In 1954, Shatner made the leap. He left Stratford and moved to New York City, determined to make it on Broadway. It was gutsy for a young Canadian actor with no connections. His first American television appearance was humble. He played Ranger Bob on The Howdy Doody Show, working alongside puppets and Clarabelle the Clown, whose only dialogue was honking a bicycle horn, but perseverance paid off. In 1956, Shatner made his Broadway debut in Tamburlaine the Great, directed by Tyrone Guthrie. The same year, he won a role that would prove fateful in more ways than one. While working on a television drama he'd written, he cast a young actress named Gloria Rand, real name Gloria Rosenberg. She would become his first wife and the mother of his 3 daughters. Hollywood calls. In 1958, Shatner landed his first major Hollywood film role, playing Alexei in MGM's The Brothers Karamazov with Yul Brynner. Suddenly, William Shatner from Montreal was working alongside movie stars. That same year, he appeared on Broadway in The World of Susie Wong, which opened in October 1958 and ran for 508 performances through January 1960, earning him the Theatre World Award in 1959. The late 50s and early 60s saw Shatner steadily building his career. He appeared in Judgment at Nuremberg in 1961, playing an army captain. In 1962, he starred in The Intruder, playing a racist agitator fighting against school integration. Television became his bread and butter. The Twilight Zone gave him one of his most memorable pre-Star Trek roles in the 1963 episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where he played a terrified airline passenger convinced he's seeing a gremlin on the wing. His wide-eyed paranoia became iconic. In 1965, he had his first series, For the People, playing an assistant district attorney. The show didn't last, but it proved Shatner could carry a series. Network executives took notice. Star Trek and stardom. Then came 1966. Gene Roddenberry, a former LAPD officer turned television writer, was casting a science fiction series unlike anything television had seen before. He'd already filmed one pilot called The Cage, with Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Christopher Pike, but the network had rejected it as too cerebral, too slow. Roddenberry was given a rare second chance to make another pilot. He needed someone to play Captain James T. Kirk, the new commander of the starship USS Enterprise.
Are probing the immeasurable blackness of space. Their leaders are an Earthman with no fear and a stranger.
The role required gravitas, charm, action hero physicality, and the ability to deliver technobabble about dilithium crystals and warp drive with absolute conviction. William Shatner auditioned and won the part. Star Trek premiered on September 8, 1966, on NBC. Kirk, the passionate human captain. Spock, the logical Vulcan science officer played by Leonard Nimoy. Dr. McCoy, the emotional Southern physician played by DeForest Kelley. Together, they entered American living rooms, and television would never quite be the same. The show presented a future where humanity had overcome its divisions, where racism and war were ancient history, where a diverse crew worked together exploring strange new worlds, seeking out new life and new civilizations, boldly going where no man had gone before. The cast was deliberately diverse for 1960s television. Nichelle Nichols played Lieutenant Uhura, an African-American woman in a position of authority at a time when such representation was rare. George Takei played Hikaru Sulu, offering positive Asian representation when Hollywood still too often relegated Asian actors to stereotypical roles. Later, Walter Koenig would join as Pavel Chekhov, a Russian character at the height of the Cold War, demonstrating that in the future, former enemies would work side by side. Shatner brought something special to Kirk. He wasn't just a space cowboy or a military commander barking orders. There was thoughtfulness, vulnerability, even poetry in his performance. Kirk wrestled with moral dilemmas about the Prime Directive and interfering in other cultures. He fell in love with alien princesses, knowing the relationship could never last. He made impossible choices between duty and heart, between the needs of the many and the needs of the few. Shatner's distinctive delivery, with its dramatic pauses and emphatic syllables, became instantly recognizable and endlessly parodied. Behind the scenes, the relationship between Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock, was complex and often tense. They had genuine chemistry on screen. Kirk and Spock felt like real friends, brothers in all but blood. But there was also competition, rivalry for screen time, and story focus. In interviews years later, Nimoy spoke candidly about their sibling rivalry. When fan mail for Spock started pouring in after the first few episodes aired, when teenage girls started writing love letters to the pointy-eared Vulcan, NBC sent down a directive: give them more Spock. For Shatner, cast as the star of the show, this created an uncomfortable dynamic. He was supposed to be the lead, the hero, but Nimoy's character was threatening to steal the spotlight. Bill's energy was very good for my performance, because Spock could then be the cool individual, Nimoy said years later. Our chemistry was successful right from the start. Very competitive, with a sibling rivalry up to here. The rivalry would last for decades, creating a rift between the two actors that would deepen over the years, poisoning what should have been a lifelong friendship. Despite the creative tensions, or perhaps because of them, Star Trek was groundbreaking. It featured television's first interracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura, a moment that was considered so controversial that some southern stations threatened to pull the episode. It tackled issues of racism, war, nationalism, all disguised as science fiction stories about alien planets. It showed a future worth fighting for, worth believing in, and it attracted a passionate fan base that would only grow with time. But passionate wasn't enough for the network. The show struggled in the ratings, never breaking into the top 30 programs. After 3 seasons and 79 episodes, despite a massive letter-writing campaign by fans to save it, Star Trek was canceled in 1969. For Shatner, it felt like the end of something special, the close of a chapter.
The fact is, unless there's something seriously wrong with the ship's equipment, there's only one person within 100 miles.
He had no idea it was just the beginning of a phenomenon that would define the rest of his life. The dark years. The cancellation of Star Trek coincided with personal catastrophe. In 1969, the same year the show ended, Shatner's marriage to Gloria Rand fell apart. They'd been married for 13 years and had 3 daughters together. Leslie, born in 1958, who'd even appeared in an episode of Star Trek as a child, Elizabeth, born in 1961, and Melanie, born in 1964, just as the show was getting started. Shatner has been brutally honest about why the marriage failed. In his autobiography, Up Till Now, he wrote about the resentment that built between them like a wall, brick by brick, argument by argument. I was working so hard to support my family and resented Gloria because I was getting so little joy out of my marriage. She resented me for probably many reasons, he admitted, with the clarity that comes from decades of reflection. Part of the problem was his infidelity. He wasn't proud of it, but he owned it in his memoir. Beautiful actresses appeared on set every week, guest stars and day players, and Shatner wasn't strong enough to resist temptation. The attention, the flattery, the opportunities were all there. So Gloria stayed home with our girls, and it seemed like each week, new and beautiful, and seemingly available, women showed up on the set, he confessed. The marriage became what he called lopsided. Gloria took care of the children, managed the household, waited for her husband to come home while Shatner was often absent, consumed by his career, by the demands of being the star of a television series. The divorce hit him hard financially and emotionally, but what came next was harder. Suddenly, William Shatner found himself unemployed and nearly broke. The steady paycheck from Star Trek was gone, those weekly episodes that had kept money flowing. His marriage was over, the family structure shattered. The money he'd made during his 3 years on the show had been spent on maintaining a household, on child support, or lost in the divorce settlement. He had 3 daughters to help support and no regular income. He needed work, any work, but roles weren't coming. Casting directors saw him as Captain Kirk, typecast in that one role, and science fiction on television was considered a dead end. This is the part of Shatner's story that many don't know, the part that doesn't make it into the highlight reels. The period after Star Trek was so financially difficult, so professionally desperate, that he ended up living in the back of his pickup truck with a camper shell. Captain Kirk, the commander of a starship, the hero who saved the galaxy every week, was homeless. He'd park the truck in various locations around Los Angeles, sometimes near the studios hoping for work, sometimes in quieter neighborhoods, and sleep there, his possessions in boxes around him, his dog for company in the California nights. Years later, he spoke about this time as one of the most depressing periods of his life, a darkness that was as much emotional as it was financial. The humiliation of falling so far, so fast, the shame of having been someone and becoming seemingly no one.
Why do birds or being funny or being wise.
He took any job he could find to keep going. Commercial voiceovers for products he'd never use. Small guest spots on television shows where he played forgettable characters in forgettable episodes. Bit parts in low-budget films that paid enough for gas and food and not much else. He appeared on Hawaii Five-0, playing a murderer in one episode. He guest starred on Marcus Welby, MD, and Ironside, taking whatever was offered, grateful for the work even when it was demeaning. The films he could get were B-movies at best, often worse. White Comanche in 1968 was an embarrassingly bad European Western where he played twin half-brothers, one good, one evil, complete with unconvincing accents and cheaper production values. Kingdom of the Spiders in 1977 was a campy horror film about tarantulas attacking a small Arizona town, memorable only for how many actual spiders were used in the filming. These weren't the kind of projects that advance a career or win awards. They were the kind that pay the rent, barely, and keep you in the industry by a thread, hoping something better comes along eventually. But Shatner kept working. He kept showing up on time, knowing his lines, being professional even when the material wasn't. There's a resilience in that, a refusal to give up even when success seemed impossibly far away, when every door seemed closed and every phone call from his agent brought more rejection. He'd gone from the bridge of the Enterprise, from being recognizable around the world, to the back of a pickup truck wondering if he'd ever work again. But he didn't quit. He couldn't afford to quit, not with daughters to support, not with bills to pay, but more than that, he was an actor. It's what he did. It's who he was. The Phoenix Rises. In 1973, Shatner married Marcy Lafferty, an actress he'd met on the set of The Andersonville Trial. Marcy brought stability back into his life. She understood the business and its uncertainties. They would stay married for 23 years. Then something unexpected happened. Star Trek wouldn't stay dead. In syndication, the show found its audience. What had struggled in prime time became a phenomenon in reruns. By the mid-70s, Star Trek conventions were drawing thousands. The cast discovered that what they'd thought was a failure had become a cultural touchstone. In 1979, Paramount brought Star Trek back as a feature film. Star Trek, the motion picture, reunited the original cast, with Shatner back in the captain's chair. The film made $175 million. Captain Kirk was back, and so was William Shatner's career. 5 more films followed over the next dozen years. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, in 1982, is still considered by many to be the best of the series, featuring Kirk's confrontation with an old enemy and the death of Spock. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, in 1984. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, in 1986, which brought humor and whales to the franchise. Then came 1989's Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, which Shatner directed. It received lukewarm reviews, but it was his chance to sit in the director's chair for a major motion picture. The final film with the original cast was Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, in 1991. But Shatner wasn't content to rest on Captain Kirk alone. In 1982, he took on another series lead in T.J. Hooker.
Loaded with hollow points.
T.J. Hooker, a recalcitrant policeman who doesn't want to do all these new things like read Miranda rights. What the hell is that?
Playing a veteran police sergeant. The show ran from 1982 to 1986, giving Shatner steady work and a paycheck for 4 years. He even directed some episodes, honing skills he'd use later. Personal tragedies and triumphs. In 1994, Shatner made his final appearance as Captain Kirk in Star Trek Generations, passing the torch to Patrick Stewart's Captain Picard. Kirk died a hero's death. It was an ending to a character that had defined Shatner's career for nearly 30 years. That same year, while directing an episode of Kung Fu: The Legend Continues, Shatner met Noreen Kidd, a model. Despite warnings from friends and family, including Leonard Nimoy, about Kidd's struggles with alcoholism, Shatner fell in love. They married in 1997, with Nimoy serving as his best man. The marriage was troubled from the start. Shatner wrote that Kidd was sober on their wedding day, but the next morning he found her drunk with vodka bottles hidden throughout their house. She checked into rehab 3 times, but addiction had its claws in deep. On August 9, 1999, Shatner's world shattered. He came home around 10 in the evening and found Noreen lifeless at the bottom of their swimming pool. She had drowned, her blood alcohol level dangerously high. Shatner tried to revive her and called 911, but it was too late. She was gone. The grief was crushing. He called her his soulmate, the love of his life. Years later, he wrote a spoken word piece called What Have You Done about her death and performed it on his album Has Been. Performing it was agonizing, but it was his way of processing the loss, of keeping her memory alive in some form. Out of that tragedy came something meaningful. Shatner founded the Narayan Shatner Foundation, which runs a halfway house for women in recovery from addiction. Women have approached him over the years to tell him the foundation saved their lives. Not me, he tells them. It was Noreen. She did that. Renaissance man. The late 90s and early 2000s saw Shatner everywhere. He hosted Rescue 911 from 1989 to 1996. He appeared in comedic roles including Miss Congeniality in 2000 alongside Sandra Bullock. In 2001, at age 70, Shatner married Elizabeth Anderson Martin, a horse trainer 27 years his junior. Their shared passion for horses created a strong bond. Shatner had been involved in breeding and showing horses for years, and had started the Hollywood Charity Horse Show in 1990 to raise funds for children's charities. But perhaps his greatest late career success came in 2004 when he joined The Practice as attorney Denny Crane. The role was meant to be a guest appearance, but Shatner's performance was so memorable that he became a regular and transitioned to the spin-off Boston Legal, which ran until 2008. Denny Crane was like Captain Kirk filtered through age and ego, a brilliant but senile lawyer. It was a performance that required Shatner to mock his own image while creating something genuinely touching. He won 2 Emmy Awards, one for each series, plus a Golden Globe. At an age when most actors are retired, Shatner was winning the biggest awards of his career. His music career took a surprising turn. That 1968 album, The Transformed Man, had been widely mocked, but decades later gained a cult following. Shatner leaned into it, releasing Has Been in 2004, produced by Ben Folds, which received actual critical praise. He followed with more albums, including Seeking Major Tom in 2011. He also became a prolific author, writing or co-writing over 30 books. His Star Trek memories chronicled his time on the show. The Tech War series of science fiction novels spawned a franchise. His autobiographies, including Up Till Now in 2008, offered candid looks at his life. To space at 90. In 2019, after 18 years of marriage, Shatner and Elizabeth divorced. The split was amicable, practical rather than bitter, 2 people recognizing that they'd grown in different directions. Or rather, they legally separated, because there's a twist to this story. In 2024, at age 93, Shatner revealed to Parade magazine with a mischievous grin, "My little secret is I'm living with my former wife. We've in effect remarried, but we haven't done another ceremony." They'd found their way back to each other, discovered that whatever had driven them apart wasn't as important as what kept pulling them together. But the most extraordinary chapter in William Shatner's extraordinary life came on October 13th, 2021. At 90 years old, he boarded a Blue Origin New Shepard rocket at Launch Site 1 in West Texas, about 25 miles north of Van Horn. Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Blue Origin and a lifelong Star Trek fan, had invited Shatner as a guest on the company's second crewed spaceflight. It was a publicity coup for Blue Origin and a chance for Shatner to actually experience what he'd spent decades pretending to do. The invitation came with medical requirements. Passengers had to be between 5 feet and 6'4", between 110 and 223 pounds. They had to be able to climb 7 flights of stairs in 90 seconds, withstand up to 5.5 times normal gravity during descent, and spend up to 90 minutes strapped into a small capsule. At 90, Shatner met all the requirements, but he was apprehensive about what his body would endure. Am I going to be able to survive the G-forces? He wondered aloud in the days before the launch. The physical demands were real. The capsule would accelerate to over 2,200 miles per hour, subjecting the passengers to forces 3 times normal gravity during ascent and even higher during descent. For a 90-year-old body, even one as active as Shatner's, it was a genuine risk. He'd joked about it, saying things like, "Good Lord, just getting up the bloody gantry," but the concern was real. People die from heart attacks at 90 busy doing far less strenuous things. Joining Shatner on the flight were Chris Boshhuizen, a former NASA engineer and co-founder of Planet Labs, Glenn DeVries, co-founder of the medical software company Metadata Solutions, and Audrey Powers, Blue Origin's vice president of mission and flight operations, there as the company representative. The launch had been delayed by a day due to high winds, adding to the tension and anticipation. On the morning of October 13th, they suited up in their flight suits with the Blue Origin logo, blue coveralls that looked almost like something the Enterprise crew might wear. They rode to the launch pad, climbed into the capsule, and strapped in. Below them, the BE-3 engine, using liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, was ready to produce 110,000 pounds of thrust. At 9:49 a.m. Central Time, exactly 11 minutes behind the scheduled launch window, the rocket's engine roared to life. The capsule shook with the force, the acceleration pushing them back into their seats. 3 Gs pressing down, making it hard to breathe, making their faces feel heavy. The rocket shot upward, climbing straight up through the atmosphere at breathtaking speed. Within seconds, they were through the clouds. Within minutes, they'd broken the sound barrier. At an altitude of about 45 miles, the capsule separated from the booster. Both continued climbing upward on ballistic trajectories, but now they were in freefall, following the arc of physics. And then, at 62 miles up, they crossed the Kármán line, the internationally recognized boundary where Earth's atmosphere ends and space begins. Suddenly, weightlessness, the pressure released, seatbelts held them in place, but everything else floated. For about 4 minutes, William Shatner was actually in space, floating in the capsule, looking out the window at a view that most of humanity will never see. The capsule reached a maximum altitude of about 66 miles, offering spectacular views of the curve of Earth below and the blackness of space above. It was the moment he'd spent his career pretending to experience. Captain Kirk had traveled to fictional planets for 3 seasons and 7 movies, stood on the bridge of a soundstage pretending to look at view screens showing alien worlds. Now Bill Shatner was actually in space, seeing what Kirk had only imagined. What he saw moved him in ways he didn't expect, triggered emotions he hadn't anticipated. Looking down at Earth, he saw the thin blue line of atmosphere, that fragile shell protecting all life. The covering of blue, this sheet, this blanket, this comforter that we have around. We think, oh, that's blue sky. Then suddenly you shoot through it all of the sudden, as though you're whipping a sheet off you when you're asleep, and you're looking into blackness, into black ugliness. The experience triggered what's called the overview effect, a phenomenon well documented among astronauts since the Apollo missions. Seeing Earth from space creates an overwhelming awareness of the planet's fragility, the absence of borders visible from space, the interconnectedness of humanity. Sally Ride felt it when she looked down at Earth from the space shuttle. Russian cosmonauts spoke of experiencing a deep shift in consciousness. It's a perspective that can't be captured in photographs or films, something that must be experienced directly. But for Shatner, there was also unexpected sorrow, an emotion he wasn't prepared for. When I looked in the opposite direction, into space, there was no mystery, no majestic awe to behold. All I saw was death. I saw a cold, dark, black emptiness. It wasn't the romantic vision of space that science fiction had sold for decades. It was hostile, indifferent, utterly devoid of life or warmth or meaning. The stars weren't twinkling from up there. They were distant points of light in an endless void. The total flight lasted just 10 minutes and 17 seconds from liftoff to touchdown. The capsule descended under parachutes, drifting down to the West Texas desert, landing gently in a cloud of dust. Recovery crews rushed to the landing site, and Jeff Bezos himself was there to open the hatch and welcome the crew back to Earth. Shatner climbed out slowly, carefully making his way down a few short steps to solid ground. His legs were shaky from the experience, from the adrenaline and the G-forces and the overwhelming emotions. Bezos embraced him, and the cameras captured what happened next, still trying to process what he'd just experienced, barely able to find words adequate to the moment. Shatner looked at Bezos and tried to explain. "What you have given me is the most profound experience," he told Bezos, his voice breaking with emotion, tears visible in his eyes. "I am so filled with emotion, just extraordinary, extraordinary." memory. I hope I never recover from this. I hope that I can maintain what I feel now. I don't want to lose it. He described seeing the blue atmosphere whip by before staring into the blackness of space. Everybody in this world needs to do this, he said, to see the blue color whip by you and now you're staring into blackness. He called it unbelievable over and over, unable to fully articulate what he'd experienced, but trying desperately to share it. He became the oldest person ever to reach space at that time, beating the record set just 3 months earlier by 82-year-old Wally Funk, who'd flown on Bezos's first crewed flight. The world watched Captain Kirk finally make it to the stars, decades after commanding the Enterprise through television's final frontier. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The character and the actor had both completed their journeys. Both had gone where they'd always talked about going. The legacy. William Shatner is 93 years old now. He's still working, still creating, still defying expectations. He hosts The Unexplained on the History Channel. He makes public appearances. He remains active on social media, engaging with fans and occasionally stirring up controversy. His 3 daughters, Leslie, Elizabeth, and Melanie, have given him grandchildren. Despite the difficulties of his first marriage and his often absent fatherhood during their childhood years, he's maintained relationships with them. They've spoken about how, despite everything, he was a committed father who tried his best. The relationship with Leonard Nimoy, his friend and rival for so many decades, ended sadly. Despite their long association and genuine affection, they didn't speak for the last 5 years of Nimoy's life. When Nimoy died in 2015, Shatner wasn't there. He's expressed deep regret about that estrangement, about letting pride and hurt feelings prevent reconciliation before it was too late. But he did make peace with the other Spock. In 2016, he wrote a book called Leonard, My 50-Year Friendship with a Remarkable Man, a tribute to his complicated relationship with Nimoy, an attempt to honor the man and the friendship even if they couldn't fix it before the end. Looking back at William Shatner's life, what stands out is resilience. He went from a young actor in Montreal to Broadway to Hollywood success, fell to living in a truck, rose again through Star Trek's Resurrection, survived personal tragedies, reinvented himself multiple times, and at an age when most people are in retirement, traveled to actual space. He turned a 3-season television show that was canceled for low ratings into a 50-year career. He made a mockery of an album into a cult classic. He took dramatic spoken word performances that people laughed at and turned them into an art form. He lost the love of his life to addiction and turned that grief into a foundation that saves lives. The secret life of William Shatner isn't really secret at all. He's written about it, talked about it, been remarkably honest about his failures and his triumphs. But knowing the facts and understanding the journey are different things. This is a man who refused to accept no, who kept working when the work dried up, who kept reinventing himself when reinvention seemed impossible. Captain Kirk was brave, resourceful, willing to break the rules for the greater good. William Shatner, it turns out, has a lot in common with the character that made him famous. He's lived a life that would make an incredible movie, filled with more drama, tragedy, and triumph than any script could contain. From a Jewish kid in Montreal to the commander of a starship, from the back of a truck to the edge of space, William Shatner has lived long and prospered in ways that would have seemed impossible when he started. And at 93, he's still going, still creating, still proving that age is just a number and that it's never too late to reach for the stars. If you enjoyed discovering the real story behind William Shatner's incredible life, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories about Hollywood's greatest stars, and let us know in the comments which part of Shatner's journey surprised you the most. Until next time, remember, the truth is often stranger and more inspiring than fiction.